On a crisp autumn evening, the Royal Beacon Hotel's lobby sparkled with polished marble floors and a warm, inviting glow. Guests in tailored suits and designer dresses moved gracefully, exchanging quiet pleasantries. Behind the front desk stood Marissa, a young receptionist who took great pride in maintaining the hotel's prestigious atmosphere. She believed she could recognize the right clientele from a glance. As the clock neared midnight, the glass doors swung open, and a tall, broad-shouldered black man entered. Dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, his kind yet weary expression hinted at a long journey. He approached the desk with measured steps. "Good evening," he greeted in a deep, calm voice, sliding a credit card across the counter. "I'd like a room for the night." Marissa's smile froze, shifting into something polite yet distant. Her eyes flicked to his casual attire, a stark contrast to the hotel's usual clientele. Standing well over 6 feet tall, he exuded a quiet confidence, but Marissa fixated on what she saw as the wrong kind of image. She glanced at the empty reservations list. Rooms were available, plenty of them in fact, but unease gripped her. He didn't fit her preconceived notion of an upscale guest. Forcing a strained smile, she replied, "I'm sorry, sir, but we're fully booked." The man's brow furrowed. His gaze swept the quiet lobby, where unoccupied tables and empty chairs told a different story. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. "I'm willing to pay any rate." Marissa crossed her arms, her posture firm. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. Perhaps you could try elsewhere." As she spoke, the glass doors opened again, admitting a well-dressed couple. The shift in Marissa's demeanor was instant. Marissa's demeanor shifted instantly. A genuine smile, a warm greeting. Within moments, she produced a room tea for the well-dressed couple without hesitation. The tall man watched, disappointment flickering in his eyes. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was bias, plain and simple. He nodded to himself, suppressing a surge of anger. "Thank you," he said quietly, turning to leave. Outside, the crisp autumn air stung his cheeks as he took a deep breath. This wasn't just any traveler being turned away. He was Shaquille "Big Shaq" O'Neal, a legendary basketball figure whose name was recognized worldwide. Beyond his sports fame, he was a successful entrepreneur who had quietly acquired properties and businesses. The Royal Beacon Hotel had been on his radar for months. Tonight's encounter sealed his decision. That night, Shaq made several calls. He spoke to his financial advisor and legal team. The hotel's parent company had been struggling, and Shaq had been considering an investment. Now, he resolved to buy it outright. By dawn, the deal was done. Shaq owned the Royal Beacon Hotel. He spent the morning reviewing staff files and policies over coffee at a quiet cafe, reflecting on the previous night. The rejection and dismissive tone replayed in his mind. Prejudice was nothing new to him, but this time, he held the power to make things right. Around midday, Shaq returned to the hotel. This time, he wore a perfectly tailored suit that accentuated his commanding presence. Heads turned as he strode confidently through the lobby. Inside, the staff continued their routine, but tension rippled through the air as some recognized him from the night before. Marissa spotted him and froze. Her mind raced, replaying their interaction. She hadn't expected to see him again. Now he looked entirely different, more commanding, his attire immaculate, exuding authority. Her heart pounded as he approached the desk. "Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you?" she asked, forcing a smile. Shaq regarded her calmly, his quiet strength evident in his gaze. "I'm here to introduce myself," he said, his voice steady but kind. "My name is Shaquille O'Neal, and as of this morning, I'm the new owner of the Royal Beacon Hotel." A hush fell over the lobby. Marissa's face turned pale, her eyes widening in shock. She stammered, "You're the owner?" The other staff and a few guests looked on, their curiosity and confusion palpable. Shaq nodded. "Yes, I completed the acquisition of this hotel earlier today. Last night I tried to check in, but you told me there were no rooms available, even though there were." His words hung in the air, his tone calm but unyielding. "I want to know why." Marissa's mind raced. She had no explanation that wouldn't reveal her bias. Her cheeks burned as she stammered, I apologize. I thought we were fully booked." Shaq didn't flinch. "I watched you give a room to a couple right after me. Don't pretend you didn't." His voice was steady, never harsh, yet each word carried weight. Marissa's lips trembled. She knew that any excuse would only make things worse. The hotel manager, Joel, emerged from the back office, his face tense. He had heard whispers all morning about a sudden takeover, but this confrontation left him unprepared. "Mr. O'Neal," Joel began, his voice oily with forced charm, "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. We didn't know it was you." Shaq turned his gaze to Joel, his expression unwavering. "So if you knew who I was, you would have treated me differently?" he asked quietly. Joel faltered, struggling for words. Shaq continued, his voice firm but calm. "That's the problem. You judge people by their appearances and perceived status, not by their worth as human beings." Joel swallowed hard, realizing how precarious his position had become. Shaq turned to address the entire lobby, his deep voice carrying authority. "I won't stand for discrimination in my hotel. Every guest deserves respect, no matter their color, clothing, or background." He looked directly at Marissa, his gaze steady. "Last night, you refused me service. This morning, I stand here as the owner, not to punish blindly, but to set things right." Marissa's knees felt weak. She had expected immediate dismissal, but instead, Shaq offered something unexpected. "I believe in second chances," he said. "If you're willing to learn and commit to treating everyone fairly, you can stay. If not, this isn't the place for you." Tears pricked Marissa's eyes. Marissa managed a shaky nod. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'll change." Shaq nodded, satisfied for the moment, and turned to Joel. "As for the management," he said firmly, "there will be changes. You'll undergo training. Everyone will. On bias, on customer relations, on treating people with dignity. This hotel will become a symbol of inclusivity, not exclusion." Joel nodded vigorously, grateful to still have a job. Around the lobby, the staff exchanged glances, some filled with admiration, others tinged with shame. The guests who had witnessed the exchange felt a sense of justice reverberating through the room. That afternoon, Shaq convened a staff meeting in a conference room with sweeping views of the city. His presence commanded the room as he shared his vision. A hotel where every guest felt genuinely welcome, where service was rooted in respect rather than stereotypes. "This hotel will embody values I learned during my basketball career. Teamwork, humility, and fairness," he said. "We'll apply those principles here. No guest should ever feel judged or excluded." He outlined his plans: comprehensive training sessions, revised policies, and community outreach programs to promote inclusivity. The employees listened intently. Some sighed in relief, grateful for the shift away from the biases that had made them uncomfortable. Others appeared apprehensive, uncertain about how they would adapt to the new standards. But Shaq's calm authority left no doubt. This was the new normal. In the following weeks, changes unfolded swiftly. The lobby's subtle elitist branding was softened, replaced with a welcoming, inclusive aesthetic. Professional trainers led diversity and hospitality workshops, encouraging the staff to confront their biases and adopt a new mindset. Marissa attended every session with determination, eager to atone for her mistakes. She learned about unconscious bias, the value of equality, and how to interact with guests with genuine warmth and professionalism. Outside the hotel, word spread that Big Shaq now owned the Royal Beacon, not as a flashy publicity stunt, but as part of a heartfelt mission to transform it. Reporters sought interviews, but Shaq remained reserved, letting his actions speak louder than headlines. New guests arrived, some curious about the change, others longtime admirers of Shaq's basketball legacy. They found a hotel reborn, one where respect and inclusivity were more than just promises, but the very foundation of its operations. Legacy, more importantly, had been restored. Travelers of all backgrounds now felt comfortable booking a room at the Royal Beacon Hotel. The staff greeted them with genuine smiles, no longer scanning their outfits or questioning their worth. The transformation wasn't just superficial, it was cultural. One late afternoon, Shaq stood in the lobby, observing Marissa as she checked in a family. The parents were casually dressed, their children excited and giggling. Marissa welcomed them graciously, her demeanor warm and unreserved. After they disappeared into the elevator, Shaq approached her. She turned, her smile now free of the tension that once marked her interactions. "Mr. O'Neal," she said warmly, "I just wanted to say thank you for giving me a second chance. I see things differently now." Shaq nodded, resting his large hand gently on the counter. "I knew you could learn," he replied. "That's what this place is about now, learning, growing, and treating people right." Marissa's eyes glistened with sincere gratitude. The painful memory of her past prejudice had become a transformative lesson, shaping her into a better person and employee. As the evening wore on, Joel, the manager, passed by and offered Shaq a respectful nod. He had adapted as well, working diligently to meet the new standards. "Joel," Shaq said, stopping him, "the hotel's booked solid next month. Looks like business is booming. Good work ensuring everything runs smoothly." Joel smiled, relief and pride mingling in his expression. "Thank you, sir. It's all thanks to your vision. The team's fully embraced it." Shaq sighed contentedly. The Royal Beacon Hotel was thriving, not by excluding people, but by welcoming everyone. Profits had risen, but more importantly, so had staff morale and guest satisfaction. The old reputation of elitist snobbery had faded, replaced by an atmosphere of genuine warmth and inclusion. A few nights later, as Shaq strolled through the lobby, he noticed an older black couple checking in. They wore plain clothes and looked weary from travel. He watched as a newly hired receptionist greeted them warmly, handing them room keys without hesitation. The couple's pleasantly surprised expressions spoke volumes. Shaq smiled to himself. This moment, simple yet profound, justified all his efforts. It was a small victory in the broader fight for equality and respect. Before leaving the hotel that night, Shaq took a seat in the lounge, sipping mineral water. He reflected on the night he was first turned away, the sting of disappointment still fresh then. But now that memory felt distant, eclipsed by what he had built. A place where his legacy wasn't just about basketball or business, but about creating something meaningful. A beacon of hope, equality, and respect. But for Shaq, it was never about the headlines. It was about doing what's right. The next morning, a card arrived for Shaq at the front desk, handed in by a guest who chose to remain anonymous. It read, "Thank you for making this a place where I feel welcome. It means more than you know." Shaq held the card, a quiet smile spreading across his face. He didn't need press conferences or public recognition. This simple, heartfelt note was enough to assure him that he'd made the right decision. As he walked through the lobby one last time before heading to meetings, he greeted staff members by name, asking about their day. Maria, a housekeeper, shared how guests had been complimenting the hotel's warm and friendly atmosphere. Tom, the bellhop, expressed pride in working there, his enthusiasm clear. These small, genuine interactions reaffirmed the transformation. Stepping outside, the morning light gleamed on the polished doors behind him. The Royal Beacon stood as a changed institution, no longer defined by exclusivity, but by inclusion and respect. Shaq reflected on how he had turned a personal slight into a catalyst for reform, transforming a moment of rejection into a story of growth and justice. He understood that true power wasn't in wealth or fame alone. It was in using influence to uplift others, to broaden perspectives, and to create lasting change. As he disappeared into the city's bustling streets, the Royal Beacon Hotel continued to shine, a symbol of progress and possibility. It stood as a testament to the idea that people can learn, environments can evolve, and justice, served quietly but resolutely, can leave a profound and lasting impact.